أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. Continuing with our sixth lecture in the series we have started titled Unity in Diversity in Islamic History, where we said the main goal is to discuss the collaboration which happened within the Shias and Sunnis. But before we get to that actual topic, we said we need to discuss some introductory discussions. We have already discussed three of them. We started the fourth one in the previous lecture, where we started discussing the conflicts within Sunnism. And then we said we will be discussing the conflicts within Shiism in the next subsequent lecture. So we started discussing the conflicts within Sunnism. And then I also explained in the previous lecture that why are we picking up this sensitive topic? I do understand it's sensitive in nature, but there's a need to be able to discuss this. And we mentioned the reasons in the previous discussion. The other thing we mentioned that we will be discussing we'll be discussing these conflicts chronologically. And then we mentioned that there were conflicts within Muslims in the first century, and there were bloody conflicts also. But those conflicts were mainly political in nature, and they were all turning back to the issue of leadership. The religious and theological conflicts start from the second century, and that is where we started, yeah? So then we discussed, if you do remember, then we discussed mainly Abu Hanifa and the attack all the Sunni Muslims and the Sunni scholars had over him. And we went on to the level to say that scholars were unanimous in the misguidance, at least the minimum on the misguidance of Abu Hanifa in that period. Leave alone if the other disbelief in all things which we discussed. But we didn't only limit ourselves to Abu Hanifa, we mentioned other scholars also. And we mentioned also that the followers invented a hadith in praise of their leaders and in condemnation of the other groups. That is what we discussed in the previous discussion. There's one more issue which remains in the second century, and then we go to the third century. For those of you who are doing research, or at least this question, for those of you who have thought about it, and the question is this, that why are the fiqhi madhahib, the jurisprudential schools in the Sunni world, only limited to four? Yeah, we all know that the schools of fiqh in Sunni world are limited to four only. So this is a question you end up asking yourself, what happened? Now, the Sunni scholars would try and give every reason that these were giants and nobody could overtake them, and that is why they became more prominent and nobody else could take over from them. But historically and academically, I don't know if that would really convince a person. Now, it's different from Shiism. If you notice in Shiism, in every period, we have had scholars, mujtahids, who end up doing ijtihad till date. Okay, till date, you have scholars doing ijtihad, and we have many scholars. As long as that scholar qualifies to become, who has studied fiqh and usul, he qualifies and becomes a mujtahid, he can give a fatwa. At least the minimum he can do is ijtihad. But that's not what is happening in the Sunni world. And that is why you will notice that the Wahhabis and the Salafis really criticize this point. Now, rightly or wrongly, that's not my discussion, but they criticize that point. Why are we limiting fiqh to these four Imams only? And why are we doing taqleed of only these four Imams? And thus you will see the literature against taqleed and against limiting fiqh to these four madhahib coming out from the Salafi and the Wahhabi world a lot. So this is one of the questions we need to tackle in the 2nd century, and then we go to the 3rd century. So let me share slides and then we go through the discussion. So I believe, and this is even historically evidenced, one of the biggest reasons, and I believe the primary reason, is the influence of the caliphs and the leaders, the politicians, so-called politicians, in this matter. You see, before the 3rd or 4th century, you might find out that there were 11 to 12 schools of fiqh, minimum at least being mentioned in books. Even Christopher Mulkert, whom we mentioned last week, he also mentions some of these schools. So the school of Awza'i, for example, in Sham, in Damascus, the school of Hassan al-Basri, the school of Layth, the contemporary of, if I'm not mistaken with the name, the contemporary of Imam Malik, the school of Tabari, and then you have the school of Ibn Abbas and the other schools, as we will mention. These schools were existing. Some people have even gone on to say there were 150 schools. Now, right or wrong, I don't know, but it seems like there were many schools of fiqh at that time. Now, what happened that this got limited? One of the primary reasons is the interference of the politicians. Now, this is not something which is very comfortable to talk about. Number one. Number two, when the politicians get involved, it's a big problem when they involve scholars. This is number two. And number three, this is the biggest musibah which we find in the Muslim Ummah, is where a politician comes and tells and dictates the scholar to do something according to his wishes. Okay, we will see this example. Now, this example has been mentioned by Qadi al-Ayyad. Qadi al-Ayyad was a famous uh, scholar in the Maliki faith. He was a judge even in the Muslim Andalusia, Spain. Yeah. So notice, I'm quoting it from the introduction to Muwatta of Malik, but this is there in Tartib al-Madarik of Qadi Ayyad also. So notice the title. طلب الخليفة أبي جعفر المنصور لوضع الكتاب. That is, Mansur Dawaniqi asks Malik to write a book. Now, he doesn't only tell him, write a book, you are a scholar, just write a book independently. Rather, he even tells him, write what type of a book. Now, look at the third point I've made, and then we come back to the first point. He says that you write a book which will avoid the strictness of Ibn Umar. That shows you that Ibn Umar had one school of fiqh which was very strict. You will avoid the leniencies of Ibn Abbas, the rukhsa of Ibn Abbas. That means it shows you Ibn Abbas had a school and he was very lenient. You will even avoid the anomalies, the shawadh of Ibn Mas'ud, who was in Kufa. Okay, that means Ibn Mas'ud also had a school. He tells him, adapt a moderate path. Now he's dictating him even how to write a book. And this is the musibah where scholars now get involved in, when politicians get involved in religious matters which they don't have expertise in. Yeah? This is an issue which we are facing till date. So now, the point I'm trying to make is here now. Qadi Ayyaz says that Mansur Dawaniqi told Malik, Imam Malik, that compile a book. Notice now, I will enforce it upon people. That means Muwatta of Malik, and which is now talking about the Maliki law, is now going to be enforced upon the people. Can you see this is a Sunni within the Sunni? So then, again, in another occasion, Mansur Dawaniqi tells Imam Malik, they were in Mecca, he tells him that make the knowledge unified. Can you see the role of a politician now? There were diverse opinions. The politicians didn't like this diversity. And thus they wanted to bring knowledge to one opinion only. And this is where I ask my fellow Muslims that when we don't allow diversity, whose sunnah are we following? The sunnah of the Prophet, or are we following the sunnah of these khulafa of the Abbasids? So Malik, understanding the severity of the matter, but he tells Mansur that, you know what, the messengers and the Sahaba, the companions of the Messenger of Allah have dispersed to different regions. So now what do we do? And everyone is in a region where he's giving his own fatwa according to his understanding. And this is what shows that there were multiple schools of fiqh according to each Sahaba. So Mansur Dawaniqi tells him that don't worry, you write a book. For the people of Iraq, I will not accept anything from them. They have to accept your book. Now, what if they refuse? He says, we will strike them by the sword. Okay, this is where it went to. A Sunni now wanting to impose a single opinion, rejecting all other Sunni opinions by the sword now. Okay? He says, we will lash them with whips if they don't accept your book. You just write a book and we will make sure that it is accepted by the masses. Okay? This was 2nd century. The 3rd century now. Now somebody comes and says that, okay, these were issues which were related to fuqaha and mujtahids. What about the muhaddithin now? So you have the icons like Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim now being questioned. And this is what I keep on saying, that the diversity was to the level, rather, that this unity also was to the level also. So this is Dr. Jonathan Brown in his canonization of Bukhari and Muslim. He quotes Hakim al-Nishapuri, the famous 5th century scholar, in his Tarikh al-Nishapur. He says that Imam al-Bukhari reached in Nishapur. Notice, he says that he quickly gained the enmity of Nishapur's senior hadith scholar, al-Dhuhli. You see this? That means the senior scholar who is a Sunni, is a muhaddith also. Imam al-Bukhari is also a muhaddith. Now these two have enmity. Over what? Over the same issue they had issue with Abu Hanifa, over the creation of Quran. This issue really created a lot of issues for the Sunnis in that period. Okay? Not only that, it didn't stop to this. Imam al-Bukhari was expelled from the city of Nishapur also. He was taken out. Shows you that Imam al-Bukhari today, who is a giant and an icon in the Sunni world, was not accepted by his contemporaries. Okay, now, is it only al-Dhuhli? Dr. Jonathan Brown goes on to say, no, it certainly portrays al-Bukhari falling into disfavor with hadith scholars. That means all the hadith scholars had issues with Imam al-Bukhari now. Do you get me? Okay. Now somebody would say that, okay, he goes back to his homeland and his home city, he will be accepted. Jonathan Brown says no. When he went back to his city, Bukhara, there also he was expelled from his city. Shows you that he wasn't accepted in his period. In different cities, he wasn't accepted the way he is being accepted today. Now, it goes on further. it doesn't stop here, wallahi. Hakim, the same Hakim al-Nishapuri continues. He says that Imam Muslim used to be a student of Imam al-Dhuhli who had issues with Imam al-Bukhari. See these issues now, okay? For 20 years, Imam Muslim was a student of al-Zuhli. After 20 years, az-Zuhli comes and tells his students that now you're not even allowed to attend al-Bukhari sessions to this extent. You're not even allowed to sit in his discussions also. This ban is not an issue of today. Yeah? Ban goes on all the way in history. So Muslim realized that no, he didn't want to go with this understanding of Zuhli. He left the discussions of Zuhli. Now, look at the reaction of Abu Zur'a al-Razi. Abu Zur'a al-Razi, again, another great muhaddith in within the Sunni world. He doesn't accept this decision of Imam Muslim. He says that Imam Muslim was unreasonable. Why did he stand up and go away? He says that if he would have stayed with Zuhli, he would have become a man. That means he wasn't accepted as a man and an icon and as a giant the way he's accepted today. Do you see these issues which are going on in history in the Sunni world? Yeah, the disunity was to the level. Okay, this is third century. Now come towards, this was third and fourth, come towards fourth and fifth century, where the Abbasids now take over. This is what we're calling the golden age and the golden period of Islam, where Islam really flourished. Now, with these problems, it flourished. Now, this is what I say, that if these were the issues and it still flourished, if Muslims would have united, I believe you would have flourished even 100 times more. Okay? This is Ibn Jawzi. Ibn Jawzi mentions this in his Al-Muntazam fi Tarikh. This book has mentioned a lot of issues till the 6th century. Ibn Jawzi is a 6th century scholar. He mentions a lot of these conflicts which went on through in history. So one of the caliphs, the Abbasid caliphs, the Abbasids were mainly Sunnis, apart from, so we had the Buwayhids in the middle, and then the Abbasids come again. So notice what the Abbasids are doing now. Okay, this caliph in the 5th century, that is 408, early 5th century, he says that this caliph demanded repentance from Mu'tazilite Hanafi jurists. Okay, Mu'tazilites are Sunnis, Hanafis are Sunnis, and the jurists also, they're scholars. But this caliph now comes and demands a repentance from them. Why? They should renounce their beliefs. Publicly, they should come and say they don't want to follow Mu'tazilism again. And then he told them no more public debates and discussion on Mu'tazili beliefs again. And then it goes on. He says he took written pledges from them that if they violate this, that means if they continue with spreading i'tizal and this Mu'tazili doctrine, then they will face severe punishment. And exactly what they did. Notice, in the end, Ibn Jawzi says that this caliph started executing. That means it didn't stop with takfir. It didn't stop with labeling. Rather, now it went to torture and it went to execution now, killing. This is what is happening in that period. So he executed Mu'tazilites. Okay, not only Mu'tazilites, Rafidis, Ismailis, Karmatians, Jahmis, and Mushabbiha, crucifying them, exiling them. He also ordered that they should be cursed from the pulpits. So this should be a warning for the others who want to bring up this problem of i'tizal again. Okay? Now the disturbing part is here. Ibn Jawzi says, وَصَارَ ذَلِكَ سُنَّةً فِي الْإِسْلَامِ. This became an established practice in Islam. That means after this now, the leaders realize that you want to stifle and limit any view, use force. And this is where I come and ask my Shia fellow brothers and sisters that when we are stifling, when we are limiting opinions, are we following the sunnah of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, or are we following the sunnah of the Abbasid caliphs? We have to ask these questions in within ourselves. Yeah? This was the 4th, 5th century. Now, in the 4th, 5th century, you have another issue. Now, the Mu'tazilites lose their power. Mu'tazilites were the rationalists. Now we have the Ash'aris coming in. So, 2nd century, we have Ahlul Hadith. 3rd century, we have the rationalists coming in, the Mu'tazilites. And then 4th, 5th century now, the Ash'aris come take over again. When the Ash'aris come take over again, this problem is going on till date. Till date. Okay? And that's why I'm quoting. Now, because I'm discussing Ash'ari, that's why I'm bringing this issue. I'm quoting Sheikh Hatim al-Hajj, who is a famous scholar in the West, an Athari scholar. He's an Ahlul Hadith scholar. Okay? He says, now notice, he's talking in the context of today. We're still having these issues, but I am now talking about the 4th, 5th century also. So notice he says that as an Athari, that means Ahlul Hadith and a scripturalist, I do recognize and regret how some people, largely from my creedal orientation, that means Ahlul Hadith, have contributed lately to inflaming the intra-Islamic debate on matters of creed and others. Now, he doesn't stop here. This is the point I was trying to make. I do, however, recognize that the hardcore of all groups share the same belligerence towards their opponents, this hostile towards each other. This is within Sunnism. They are violent and they're hostile towards each other. Okay? Now, then he mentions a point which, again, he's trying to prove that the Ahlul Hadith were not as hostile towards the scholars of the Ash'ari creed, the way the Ash'ari scholars are towards the Ahlul Hadith, which is not the discussion. The last point is what my discussion is. Notice, it says also, historically, Atharis have frequently been the object of this hostility. To what level? You find takfir, excommunication. They're being removed from the Sunnah. They're not Sunnis anymore. And la'an, invocation of curses, too often in the writings of theologians. Again, not only the speakers, the theologians in their books cursing and doing takfir of another Sunni. So he now mentions, he says, to the point that Izzuddin Ibn Abdus Salam was surprised that how much are we doing takfir of our own Sunnis. This is the level it went to. The Ash'aris cursing and condemning the Ahlul Hadith. Now, does it stop there? No. So Ahlul Hadith, then he says that, and this is why we find, and this is where I keep on saying that methodology was the biggest reason for the differences between these groups. So he says that Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal was against engaging in debates and discourses with the mutakallimin, that means the theologians and the philosophers. And we'll come and see the same issue when we come in the Schism, when we discuss Akhbari scholars, you will notice that we have the same problem going on within the Shiism also. Can you see this? The Ahlul Hadith were not in good terms with the theologians and the philosophers. Now, the Ahlul Hadith continue to condemn and continue till date to condemn theology and mutakallimin and theologians, and the mutakallimin and the theologians also condemn the Atharis and the Ahlul Hadith. Now it doesn't stop here. Another dimension is included, which we have not discussed. Now it's labeling and name calling. So some of them would even call them Hashawiyya, which was a derogatory term for the Ahlul Hadith. And that is why I tell my Sunni brothers, those who want to call us Shias, Rafidis, and all these labels which come out, what happens if I as a Shia come and call every Sunni a Hashawiyya? Okay, start using these derogatory terms. To whose benefit? Okay, and that is why I'm suggesting let's leave everything aside, leave all these labels, come together, deal with each other as brothers, and work together. Okay, so now this is the Ash'ari condemnation of Ahlul Hadith and the Mutakallimin and the theologians. And that is why this is a book which is written recently, Nishatul Ash'ari al-Mu'asir, the developments in the current Ash'arism. So it's a very recent book. Notice what he says. He says that the label of people of truth, Ahlul Haqq, for the Ash'aris, not for Ahlul Hadith, not for Mu'tazilites, okay, not for other Sunni strands. For the Ash'aris, is commonly found in the writings of Al-Juwayni. So Al-Juwayni, Imam al-Haramain, as is known, is a very famous theologian, Ash'ari theologian. He was the teacher of Al-Ghazali also. Shows you his importance. Okay? Now, he comes and terms the Ash'aris as people of Haqq. Now, if it would have stopped there, beautiful. But now notice, the scholars go on further to say that whoever believes in anything apart from the beliefs of the people of truth, that means Ash'aris, is an unbeliever. فَهُوَ كَافِرٌ. خلاص. Okay? You term them as kafir. Now, it didn't stop here. So now the other side also, the Ahlul Hadith turned back. So in the 7th, 8th century, you have Ibn Taymiyyah now coming in and his students opposing the Ash'aris and the Mu'tazilites and the philosophers and the Sufis. Who didn't Ibn Taymiyyah oppose? You need to question that, yeah? But because Ibn Taymiyyah didn't get authority, so he was imprisoned and the problems he faced. You see this coming out from the scholars of Najd. Scholars of Najd is today Saudi Arabia. In the 1900, when they take power, this is a book written by them, Majmu' al-Rasail wal-Masail al-Najdiyya. So it's an encyclopedia on the views of the Najdi scholars. That means the Wahhabi scholars. These are Ahlul Hadith now, following the Ibn Taymiyyah's methodology. Look at what they do with the Ash'aris now. Okay, so this is very contemporary, this is very recent, but it started with Ibn Taymiyyah. Notice what they say. This group that associates itself with Al-Ash'ari, okay, the Ash'aris. Ash'aris, by the way, the majority of the Sunnis today are Ash'aris in belief. That means these Wahhabis are speaking of the majority of the Sunnis like this. Notice they're saying that this group has described the Lord of the worlds with attributes of non-existence and inanimateness. Okay? That means they're describing Allah with non-existence. This is how they're describing the Ash'aris now. They have indeed committed a grave slander against Allah. Okay, now it doesn't stop here. They go on. فهذه الطائفة المنحرفة عن الحق. This deviant group which strayed away from the haqq and they went away from haqq has been mobilized by the devils. So not only are they deviant, they have been mobilized by the devils, the shayateen. To do what? To mislead the people from the path of Allah. That means the Ash'aris are all misguided. They are shaitan. They're misguiding everybody from the path of truth. It doesn't stop. They have denied the oneness of Allah and permitted shirk. Ya Allah. We stop. What happens? There's nothing more than this you can say, yeah? Apart from the killing which goes on. Now, the Wahhabis are portraying that the Imams from the people of Ahlus Sunnah were against Ash'arism throughout the history of Sunnism. And they're saying that, notice, they were against this stubborn and disbelieving group. Okay? في الرد على هذه الطائفة الكافرة المعاندة. The scholars have always written refutations against these Ash'aris who are not only mu'anid, they are not only defiant, but they are kafir also. They're disbelievers. Okay? Can you see these intra-fights going on? This is within Sunnism yet. Okay, now we don't come to Shiism and Sunnism. This is still within Sunnism. Now, the other issue which I am now seeing is with some of the scholars is this issue of implicit takfir. If you're following up with some of the scholars in Pakistan, for example, I heard some of the scholars, they apparently will come and tell you that we believe all Muslims are Muslims. We don't consider any Muslim sect and any follower of a Muslim sect as a kafir. Now, this is a beautiful understanding if that is maintained. But the problem with these scholars is that the way they speak about these groups is even worse than those who are doing explicit takfir. You know, the way we have today in the politics, the way they call, you have Trump and Biden, yeah? You have Trump who speaks out whatever is in his heart, he speaks it out. But then you have Biden. I'm sorry to be comparing. I'm not comparing these scholars to these politicians, but I'm just trying to give an analogy to be able to understand the problem we are facing even in politics. That you have somebody a politician who speaks out what is in his heart. And then you have a politician who has one thing in his heart but speaks something else outside. Okay, this is a similar situation we are going on with implicit takfir. These scholars, when they do takfir, they apparently say we consider them as Muslims. But the statements they give out, they're worse than the explicit takfir you go through. So I'll not mention the name. I was listening to one Pakistani YouTuber, a youth. He compiled the statements of one of the scholars in Pakistan. Wallahi, you get surprised. You get surprised. This youth also was like, you know, they will say that hum sabko Musalman maan rahe, we consider everybody as Muslim. But then they start. These people, when they talk about shirk, for example, they'll say, these people are like this, these people are like this. And then the same person is saying that these people are Muslims. Now, when you're discussing shirk and then applying it on a group, what does it imply? Okay? And that is why I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to propose, is discuss your opinion. And there's no issue with discussing an opinion. You come and discuss your opinion, make it very clear, but don't apply it on certain groups. That's not our job. People themselves should be aqil enough, intellectual enough to be able to say, okay, it applies to this group, and I'll not associate myself with this group. But let's not, as a scholar, they should not apply it on groups. Now, this is similar to what is happening with the Wahhabis now, okay? So Wahhabis now, to come and say that, okay, Ash'aris are Muslims, they are our brothers and all, so some start going with the implicit takfir now. So look at this is Salih bin Fawzan, again, a famous scholar within the Wahhabi world. He's discussing the Ash'aris. He says that they abandon the clear and the muhkam verses. This is their methodology, and follow the mutashabih and ambiguous verses. But now it gets worse now. Who are these people? These matters are only denied by the innovators, the mubtadi', among the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, and the Ash'aris, all of them Sunnis. Okay, the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila are not even considered as Sunnis today. But the Ash'ari are the majority Sunnis today. Okay, they're all mubtadi', they're all innovators. Now, this is the point I'm trying to make, the implicit tafsir, implicit takfir, who follow the methodology of the polytheists of Quraysh. They're following the methodology of mushrikeen of Quraysh. What does it tell you? That once you follow what the mushrikeen are doing, you also part of them also. So you're not telling them you're mushriks, but you're telling them you're following the path of the mushriks. This is a worst disease now we are seeing within some of these progressive scholars. Okay? Now, coming to a contemporary example, again, I'm trying to give as many examples, and there are more to discuss. But I'm trying to give different examples from different continents to show you that this problem is not limited to one place also. Okay? So the Barelvis and the Obandi problem starts from Indo-Pak. And now it's come to the West because of the migration these people have had towards the West. So the same debates. If you're following up on social media, what they call the Aqidah wars, they're still going on in the West. In the English speaking world, you will see these Aqidah wars. Wallahi, we don't need to go into these social media issues. So, what is strange is this now. The Barelvis and Deobandis basically are following exactly everything the same. And still they consider each other disbelievers. Notice. So this is a book, Revival from Below, the Deoband Movement by Ingram. He quotes on page number 7, notice, the Barelvis and Deobandis, both of them are Sunnis. In fiqh, they follow the Hanafi law. In belief, they follow the Ash'ari or Maturidi theology. And in Sufism also, they follow the same tariqah and the same silsila and the same teachers. Everything is similar. And yet they do takfir. Takfir to the level that they are not allowed to intermarry with each other. It's haram to marry each other because they consider each other murtad and kafir. This is where it has reached. Okay? Now, the differences were mainly in 3 issues. And then these 3 issues now go into further issues. But the 3 main issues they differed on. One was the possibility of Allah creating another prophet like the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now they have discussions which I will not go into. The second issue they have issues with is that the possibility of God telling a lie. Okay, so this is a theological debate. Can God commit evil, not commit evil? Which again, it's a theological debate which we don't want to get into the discussion. And the third issue, which I believe is the main issue, the question of the supernatural qualities of the Prophet, including ilm al-ghayb, the hidden knowledge. These are three main issues which have now, which were the source and the cause of the problem, which has now gone further. So now you see Mawlid is a problem. This is bid'ah. This is bid'ah. They are coming, the cause are these three main issues. Okay, so let me give you an example. Uh, I'm quoting this from the book of Maulana Thanwi. Thanwi, Ashraf Ali Thanwi, was the main founder, one of the three founders of the Deoband movement. I'm quoting from his book. His students have another tafsir for it. I don't want to get into that. But when you look at uh, their statements about the Prophet, you get surprised. Wallahi, it's ajib sometimes. But as ajib it is, as strange it is, does it entail takfir? That is my question. Okay, I personally totally disagree with this understanding. But does it mean that I come and do takfir of a Deoband? That's the question. Okay, so when it comes to ilm al-ghayb of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Deoband Maulana Thanwi was asked about it. So when he was asked about this issue, he says that okay, there are two scenarios. The Prophet has absolute ilm al-ghayb and hidden knowledge, he says, or has partial ilm al-ghayb. He says if he has absolute ilm al-ghayb, then he becomes God. So that is not possible, and that's not something which even the Barelvis or none of the Muslims have accepted this. So what remains is the partial knowledge. Now look at how he terms it, how he, ya Allah, how he says it. He says that if it refers to partial knowledge about the Prophet, such knowledge of the unseen is also possessed by Zayd, Umar, and every child, insane person, and indeed all animals and beasts. This is what is ajib, yani. Wallahi, when you do academic discussions, this is not where we should go to. Okay, what he's trying to say is that every human has some knowledge which the other human doesn't have. That means the knowledge I possess is ilm al-ghayb for me, and the other one because he doesn't know. So does that make me a prophet? No. So he's trying to compare that with the Prophet also. He says, even animals and the beasts and insane people and the children also have something which the others don't have. Does that make them prophets? No. Okay? Now, this is where they went to. Okay? And that is why, if you see their works, they will come and say that Shaitan is more knowledgeable than the Prophet. This is how they've gone. This is how far they've gone. With all these issues they speak, okay, we disagree with everything they speak. But does it mean that we do kufr, we do takfir of them? This is the question I'm asking. Okay? Now, uh, Brandon Ingram in his book also mentions where did it start? And this is a humble plea to my Shia brothers and sisters. My Shia brothers and sisters, if we also don't take care, the issues we are having in within will result into this where the Barelvis and the Obandis went. We will come and discuss Shiism. We saw such kind of hostility between groups in history. We are going back there only if we don't stop it now. Okay? We see similar issues happening with the Protestants and the Catholics. Notice, Ingram says that where did it start? It started early 18s. Deobandis accused the Barelvis of inserting these discussions in public. This is what we're hearing, yeah, from the Shias also today. That any scholar who doesn't have an answer for something which is being discussed in public, they say, but why are you bringing these technical discussions in the public? This is the same problem which started with the Deobandis and the Barelwis. The Deobandis accused the Barelwis that why are you bringing these technical discussions and theological puzzles, the way Ingram calls it, in the public? Why are you bringing it up? Keep it inside. And the Barelwis also accused the Deobandis of the same. And we are doing the same today. If we don't sit down and sort our matters, God forbid we will reach to this level of takfiring each other. Now notice where it is reached. Barelwis tell the Deobandis, because they don't attend the Mawlid of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're disbelievers. The Deobandis go to the level, another level, that because the Barelwis believe that in Mawlid, the Holy Prophet graces that occasion. They say that the presence of the Holy Prophet is there in the Mawlid. The Deobandis consider this as kufr and shirk because they say that this is associating God with others. Only God can be everywhere at every time, not the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and thus this is kufr and shirk. Do you get me? Okay. Now it didn't stop here. Ahmad Reza Khan, the founder of Ahmad Reza Khan Barelwi, who was the founder of the Barelwi movement, in early 19th, he gathers all these so-called heretical statements of the Deobandis and goes to Mecca and Medina. He goes to the scholars of Mecca and Medina and telling them, Baba, these are the statements coming out from the Deobandis. So he gets statements from those scholars and then he publishes it as a book. Notice the name of the book. And this is what I'm worried, that's where we are going. Scholars who speak in within Shiism a bit different language, we sideline them quickly. Okay? And as long, even if they're mujtahids, this is the problem we are facing. Okay? Look at the name of the book. Husam al-Haramain ala al-Manhar al-Kufr wal-Main. This is an Urdu book with a title which is in Arabic. Look at the title. The sword. Wallah, in academic terms, you would use such terminologies. The sword of the two holy mosques upon the throat of unbelief and falsehood. Okay? One considering the other as kafir and falsehood altogether. And they do it with each other. Again, Ingram goes on in his book. I don't want to go further with this example. I give you further two examples, contemporary examples, and I finish. Again, my apologies. Sometimes I'm taking a bit more time, but again, I need to speak all these things to be able to make that issue clear. Sheikh Al-Albani, okay, Sheikh Albani, who is one of the known scholars in within the hadith world, actually, written books on different topics altogether. Notice, in the Sunni world, he is now considered, even with some Sunnis, he's considered a scholar in Rijal also, with his books about Silsilatul Ahadith al-Da'ifa and Sahiha. Okay? This scholar, in the 80s, he is in Syria. He rejects the Syrian government's support for the Hanafi legal code. He's a Sunni. He doesn't want the Syrian government to implement the Hanafi code, Hanafi fiqh. This is where it has reached, okay? So it went on to that level that his opposition went on to the level that he was imprisoned and he was forced to leave Syria for Jordan. He even left Jordan, and the reason for that, he questioned the status quo. The 6 books of Sihah al-Sitta, the way they call it, again, this word Sihah al-Sitta, I don't know if the the Sunnis would agree with it. But the six canonical books of the Sunnism, he started questioning them. And notice he has written now Sahih Ibn Majah, Sahih, for example, Nisa'i. He is trying to show now there are hadith in these books which are Sahih, and the hadith in these books which are not Sahih. He even went on into Bukhari and Muslim for a while. And I personally believe this is the reason he faced a lot of backlash from the Sunni scholars. A lot of criticism and refutations have been written against him. He had then to go to Yemen, and I guess he died in Yemen, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? This is where it went to. Now, with his scholarship in the Sunni world, he's regarded as a scholar, but still, this is what he had to go through. So some they say that he's Bukhari Zaman. Now, this is a statement they use for him also. It doesn't stop there. The Wahhabis and the Atharis and the Salafis have written books against the Ash'aris till date. Okay? Look at one book's name, Dhammul Asha'ira wal Mutakallimin wal Falasafa. A refutation, this is a recent book, a contemporary book, shows you these problems are still there within these groups. A Salafi, an Ahlul Hadith, writes a book against and refutation against the Ash'aris, the theologians, and the philosophers. Now, this is a very strange title. Tawbatu A'lam al-Asha'ira. It means the repentance of the giants of Ash'arism. It means if you want to come out from one strand of Sunni Islam to another strand of Sunni Islam, you need to do tawbah. You need to repent. Because there was kufr and irtidad. Okay, this is where it has gone. And finally, again, I gave one example of politicians getting involved in religious matters. I give another example. And this is where I come and say one of the biggest bala we are facing is this, that scholars get used by the politicians. Now, knowingly, unknowingly, I don't know the intentions of the scholars mentioned in here. But knowingly or unknowingly, the politicians are smart people, okay? They want to use the scholars for their own purpose. So, for those of you following up again on the politics, if this is a question I asked myself long ago also, when the Arab Spring happened in 2011, this was a fire which happened, in several Middle Eastern countries, you see revolutions happening. But the question you ask, why did it fail? What happened? Every country, it ended up failing. Egypt, Morsi came in 1 year, left. Ghanoush in Tunisia, failure. Okay, Libya, we see what's happening today. And other countries. Now, why did it fail? Okay, so one of the primary reasons is mentioned in this book. This was a book about the history of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Okay, now my discussion is not that. It's called the Fourth Ordeal. It goes on with 4 ordeals the Muslim Brotherhood went through. This author mentions this within the history, but this is where I realized this is one of the primary reasons. And I mentioned this earlier also. You notice the politicians have issues with the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwanis, yeah? Now, personally, also, I don't agree with the Ikhwani ideology of Sayyid Qutb and Hassan al-Banna and all that. And again, they have strands also within themselves, the Muslim Brotherhood. But look at where it goes to. Now, in March 2014, Saudi Arabia went and declared the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Now, this was the only issue remaining yet. Okay? Now you come and call your fellow Muslim brothers, however much difference you have with them, as a terrorist organization. Based on what? Sheikh Yusuf al-Qardawi gives a statement accusing the two Gulf countries, that means the Saudi and UAE, as un-Islamic. So in return, the Saudis go further and say these are terrorists also. Now, what does UAE do? That is what the point I'm trying to make, and I finish. UAE starts a soft power diplomacy campaign, yeah? So what we call the cognitive warfare, we have been discussing about it. You see, Sheikh al-Qardawi had a group of Muslim scholars called Al-Ittihad al-Alami lil-Ulama al-Muslimin, okay? The International Union of Muslim Scholars. That was their group. This was a group of Muslim scholars who would come together. Now, to counter this group, and this is where I say politicians are using scholars to disunite the ummah. Now, I'm not saying if scholars can have differences within themselves, but when politicians get involved, and they are the ones who tell you that now you form another group to counter this group, that is where the problem starts. Okay? So what the UAE government does now is they form another committee and another group which is called Majlis al-Hukama al-Muslimin. Look at the name also. Okay? The Muslim Council of the Elders and the Wise People, Hukama. To do what? To counter this group. Now, and that is why these two scholars were used. Now, intentionally or intentionally, I don't know, okay? These are famous scholars. Sheikh Abdullah bin Bay, the Mauritanian scholar, is the teacher of the famous speaker in the Sunni, in the Western world, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. And the Al-Azhar scholar, Sheikh Ahmad al-Tayyib. Okay, these are known scholars in the Sunni world. They are now put as part of this group, and they made the board members of this group. What are they supposed to do? The council positioned itself as an apolitical, that means they're not going to involve themselves in politics, and they're neo-Sufists. Okay, so the Islam you're going to promote is that you're passive altogether. Anybody does zulm on you, you just sit down and do nothing, no raising your voice, no speaking anything against injustice. You just need to be sitting down and doing nothing. You just stick to your salah and all that. Now, I don't want to get into all these issues of politics and all what not. At the moment, I'm just trying to show this, that notice these two groups and these two scholars are brought to confront each other. This is the problem which we are talking about. And especially now, the politicians using the scholars. Now, it doesn't stop there. The UAE pressured the British government of David Cameron at that time to declare the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. That means the British were not interested, but it's a Muslim instigating, inciting a Western government to declare another Muslim as a terrorist organization. This is where it has reached to. Okay? In conclusion, I could give many examples. I suffice with these examples to be able to give you a picture that the conflicts have been deep. Now, two reasons, again, to show you that the conflicts were very deep. It's enough for us that we should leave all these conflicts behind. And to show you that there was diversity also. There was no so-called mainstream and single strand of Sunnism. Rather, Sunnism has always been diverse also. Okay? We pray to Allah to give us the tawfiq to be able to again unite, especially in the month of Ramadan, which is ahead of us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.